couple of different themes that I think I'm going to try to use to spring off into the next topic. We'll see how this goes. So you mentioned earlier, you said job boards, they monetize by applicant flow. So they just want a ton of applicants, right? And of course, most people, I think it's fair to say most people listening to this, if you were told to go out and apply for a job, and that's all you were told, you'd probably go straight to a jobs board. You'd start there, right? So it's a natural...
Or you would just Google apply for a job, and the job boards are all search engine optimized, so they rise up.
Yes, exactly. So there's an economic principle, and we talk about this a lot internally, but there's an economic principle that says that if you want to succeed, if you want to have an unusually good outcome, and data science is an unusually good outcome, it's a hard thing to achieve, you can't do the usual things. It's like in the stock market. You don't want to be investing when everyone's investing. You don't want to be selling when everyone's selling. You don't want to be applying through job boards when everybody else is applying through job boards. It's a great way to get drowned out in a sea of noise. So we talked about the alternative in this case, which is going through hiring managers, but I think there's a whole other area where this principle applies as well, and that is in deciding what kinds of projects you should build. Data science, of course, really big on projects. That's the way you show your value as a data scientist, especially if you're entry level, but even if you're more senior. So what are your thoughts, Ed, on project building in data science? What should people do?
Good question. So there's a deep principle behind any project you want to put together in this area, or probably in any other area. You touched on one part of that principle when you said you have to do something that's unusually good to have an unusually good outcome. So let's say that over the course of their attempts, let's say 10% of the people who try to become data scientists, or sort of want to, actually end up succeeding. So you want to be in the top 10%. Relatively difficult to achieve. Of course, the bulk of people don't do that. So that might make you think like, okay, I need to do top 10%. I need to build a top 10% project. Like I need to do something that's in the top 10%. And that's kind of partly true, but there's an additional thing that you need to do, which you can get sunk if you forget it. And that is, it's not quite enough to be like, I want to make a top 10% project. You have to make a top 10% project that is very obviously a top 10% project. In other words, if I'm a hiring manager, you have to make it as easy as possible for me to evaluate that you have done a top 10% project. So for example, if you do, if you actually, let's say like you're working on the Titanic data set, and there's a tutorial, a bunch of tutorials that exist for the thing that you are attempting to do, but you're doing something that's hard to do if you're not reading the tutorials. So there's a bunch of tutorials that exist, but you're like, I'm going to do this like hard project on the Titanic data set, and I'm going to commit to myself not to like go online on the internet and cheat and blah, blah, blah. So you spend a significant amount of time working on this Titanic project. You do a whole bunch of stuff. It's genuinely hard. It's a genuine accomplishment. It's a bunch of real work, all kind of great stuff. The problem is that hiring managers who look at your project description in your resume or anywhere else, they immediately go to, well, this person could have just gone and done, like looked at this tutorial online and copy pasted and so on and so forth. That means that the work that you've done isn't like provable work. The concept of proof of work, which is like, obviously it's like a crypto concept, it applies here. You're looking not just for a bunch of work, you're looking for a proof of work. A proof of work means you've done a bunch of expensive work, but the expensive work that you've done is cheap for someone else to check that you did that expensive work. That's the sort of thing you're trying to do. You're trying to build a project that is hard and is obviously hard, and the rest is kind of tactics around how to do it.
This is funny. This reminds me of a call I had actually with a mentee. Ahead of time, she sent me her resume. She'd done again, a generative adversarial network that was designed to generate new entries in the Titanic passenger manifest. So like, this is an objectively interesting project that is novel and different. The problem was when I looked at her resume, my first advice to her was, oh yeah, take this Titanic project off your thing. I hadn't read it. All I saw, all my brain registered was Titanic data set. And so I went, oh, well, this is a training wheel project. So like, even people who genuinely want you to succeed, who are trying to make this work for you, like there are ways to send signals that just like, you nuke yourself right out the gate because you're not even giving their brain a chance to get excited about your project.
Yeah, make it easy for me to see how much work you did. And you're right, there are certain signals that even for technical hiring managers, just quickly pattern match to, oh, like this is a lightweight project. Even if you take the Titanic data set and you create like an AGI that designs, who knows, something really complicated, sometimes the hiring manager will just like pattern match against like, oh, here's another dud. Because if you think about it, if 99 out of 100 of applications that feature the Titanic data set in their resumes are duds, it doesn't make sense to expend the effort to dive into the detail once you pattern match to that keyword. So what you're trying to do is like give the hiring manager right up front in the headline, this is different and interesting. You don't need to have like 6 or 7 projects that are all different and interesting. That's just not realistic. But you should have one